Hello and welcome to the Gold Goats and Guns podcast for April 18th, 2024. My name is Tom Luongo and we have a lot to talk about. It's been a while, folks, and I apologize for that. But, you know, when you're staring down the barrel of World War III, every once in a while, you just kind of like take a couple of weeks off and go, you know what? I don't want to talk into a microphone. I have with me today a good friend, no, new good friend, a fellow Paisan like Vince Lanci and others who have been the regulars on this podcast. Bobby Iaccino is with me today, and we're going to chat about whatever comes to mind. And I was on his podcast the other day, the Future's Edge podcast with Jim Iuorio the other day. And I said, well, you know, it's time for us to do a home and home, man. So Bobby, welcome to the show, and, you know, let everybody know who you are and what you do and all the rest of it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, bud. My name's Bobby Iaccino. As you said, I am the co-founder, chief market strategist of Path Trading Partners. We're sort of a boutique analytical firm. If a firm is large enough to want their own research, but not large enough to want to hire a bunch of analysts, they call us. We create research and they stamp their name on it. Our biggest client's Goldman Sachs. I'm just kidding. But they're always following what I do as far as I'm concerned, because every time I say something, 3 months later, they say it. So it either means I'm right or I'm corrupted. I think it means I'm right. Anyway, I'm also the co-host, as you mentioned, of the Future's Edge podcast with Jim Iuorio. I do all the behind the scenes work on that show as well. Jimmy does all the smiling and charming shit. So those are the two biggest things that I do right now. The podcast is growing by leaps and bounds. So if you guys do listen to podcasts, run to watch the Tom Luongo edition, because that was spectacular.
Thank you.
Literally, man, we just, as you said, we just met each other through a mutual friend I have down here, John Sorga. And that podcast went off like a Roman candle. I loved it. It was fantastic.
Yeah, Johnny's a great guy. He's the one that put the whole SOFR versus LIBOR thing in my head.
Yeah.
Now that you've mentioned his name, I usually try to keep people's names out of the spotlight if they don't want it.
Care.
But yeah, no, he put that into my head one day. He was like, threw a whole bunch of inside baseball at me about what was going on. I'm like, okay, hold on. Explain this like I'm a 4-year-old, because I really am a 4-year-old when it comes to this stuff. And then he did. And then I repeated it back to him. And he went, "You're correct." I'm like, all right, running with it. And he's like, "Go for it, dude. Let's see how it plays out in public." I'm like, all right. So here we are 2.5, almost 3 years later. And, you know, it's that. So, so Bobby,
I like the idea that we're just going to kind of riff, because there, like you said, there's a lot to talk about, and we focus on a subject, it's going to be not good.
Right. So what I would say is the following, like, well, okay, with that and say, what do you want to riff on, man? You know,
well, I
I'm
think
good.
The thing that actually is kind of stuck in my craw the most right now is this idea that somehow our tribalism is ingrained in us. You know, I was talking to somebody the other day. I won't mention her name, but we were talking about how the biggest problem that faces us is the loss of sort of economic freedom. Because as you lose economic freedom, you're willing to give up other freedoms. And we saw that during the pandemic. And you talked about this on our show a little bit. But right now, we're literally stuck with a choice of working for a big firm that's probably going to fire you if you say something wrong. Building your own shit, which will probably make less, at least initially, but you'll be really, really happy. And then working somewhere in the realm of big tech. So for example, our podcast for now is on YouTube and all the big podcast platforms. I say for now because we don't accept sponsors that tell us what to say. And I'm talking to these guys about really blowing our podcast up, hiring them to really blow it up. They blew up Patrick Bet-David's podcast and Jedediah Bila's podcast. They were the guys behind the sort of blowing up of those. And they want to do the same thing for Jimmy and I. But one of the things they've said to me that I'm uncomfortable with is we have to sort of give you some YouTube guardrails. And I don't like that. I don't like it at all.
Yeah.
So, and it just brings me this whole theme of when your economic freedom is dependent on others, all other freedoms, you're willing to give them away to continue to feed your family.
Yeah.
And that's the structure they're trying to build around us. And that's what I'm trying to get my mind around, is to how to avoid that.
Yeah, it's a great point. I really didn't think you were going to go there, and then the minute you did, I'm like, oh, excellent, because you know it's one of the things that Dexter White and I have struggled with in building Gold Goats and Guns. We've said from the beginning, We really do want to remain as independent as possible. We want to take as little advertising as possible. And if we do take advertising, like it comes with no guarantee that we're going to attenuate anything we say. Any censorship that we engage in is going to be on our end, not on anybody else's end. And we have guidelines of things that in general that I don't particularly want to or need to talk about, and that's that. And if you
Yeah.
don't like it, well, go find another podcast to listen to. Fuck you, I don't care, because it is my livelihood, it's my daughter, it's my wife, it's all the rest of it. And I don't need to be remanded to Guantanamo because I won't name the Jew, for example. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this is the kind of thing we live in this world, and who the hell wants
Yeah.
to go there?
It's crazy too, because like you talk about the speech aspect of it. And this is what I mean by big tech. Like, we're speaking on a platform, and at some point people will go to platforms to listen to us speak, right? And I really think as sort of classic conservatives, classic liberals, we could call ourselves that, libertarians, any of those three things, not liberal in the sense of what liberals have become, which is far left. Um, we have to try and support companies and businesses to do the same thing. And by that, in that same vein, we have to support sort of valuetainment people. I'm stealing Patrick Bet-David's line there, but infotainment people like you and like Jimmy and I that provide honest opinions. Jimmy is very fond of saying that, you may not like our opinion, but we can guarantee you it's ours. It's not
Exactly.
somebody else's.
Exactly.
So,
And
yeah.
I think that's a really, it's a very, very good point. Like, that's what people are craving.
Yeah.
And they want to know that you're authentic, even if you're authentically bad, right?
Mhm.
Even, I mean, we just want to know. We live in a world of such overlying psyops of who's right and who's real and who's not real. And by the way, it's done on purpose in
Mhm.
order to in order to put doubt in the minds of people who you've come to trust. They want you to trust nothing. They want everybody to be paranoid and stuck in their fight or flight response, and not have any touchstones that give them any sense of comfort or any sense of what's the word I'm looking for? Um, oh my God, uh, that's comfort's the wrong word. It's predictability. Like, they
Yeah.
know where they can go to get information and help them see the world clearly, right? And even if it's not correct, and then we own our mistakes, and we don't pat ourselves in the back when we're right too hard, and we just keep moving forward, because every day is another opportunity to you know come up with a better idea. And that's
It's
the way I
interesting
think
you
we
say
should
that.
do.
It's like when you're willing to give up any part of your autonomy for comfort. And a lot of people are willing to do that, man. I am shocked. I don't know if you're shocked. I promised myself during Trump's first term that I would not lose any friends over politics. And I've seen mutual friends of mine hate each other now, right? Over politics. And I said, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing it. And very recently, I went to a minor league hockey game. A friend of mine had bought tickets for a luxury box at a charity auction, right? Really good guy, lifelong friend, 30 years. It was a bunch of his family members and me, right? And they started talking about this Saturday Night Live skit, which was funny, which really never happens anymore, but which was funny, and it was politically charged, and it had to do with the Republican response to the State of the Union. Now, I didn't watch the State of the Union, and I didn't watch the Republican response, right? Because what do I need? More lies? I
Right.
need more people trying to convince me to think in a way that I don't want to think. I didn't watch either. But I heard them just making fun of one side and then talking about the State of the Union. Biden actually looked pretty good. He looked like he was with it. He looked like he was there. And there, I have obviously already given the punchline that this is sort of a left-leaning family that I'm friends with. And I almost couldn't help myself but become enraged. I wanted to leave. And
Right.
I went to the bathroom instead. And I wasn't going to drink that night. I got a drink, probably a bad idea. And I started to think, I'm like, I love these people as human beings, like all of them. Some of his family members I knew, some were new to me. And I said, I really care about these guys as human beings, but how could they possibly think that looking at your president saying, he looked okay, was somehow something you should support?
Right.
You're saying he looked okay versus That's the kind of thing I used to say about my father, God rest his soul. And, my parents or my other family members, I moved home to help my mother take care of him when he had Parkinson's and dementia. And, they'd call me up, how's he doing? I'm like, he looks pretty good today, which was, of course, relative to
Right.
how bad he was doing.
Yeah,
And this is the thing that drives me crazy, man. Like, I don't want to lose people, but it's hard, man. It's hard.
it is. It is. What I found over the last 7 years is just a kind of a loss of friendship through neglect or attrition. Like, all of my friends that I grew, we grew up together in college here in North Florida. We all went to the University of Florida together, and we all met each other. And best man at whose wedding, and who's the other one's godparent, and blah 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 blah
Mhm.
blah. Right, and we don't speak to each other anymore. And it's simply because they know what I do. They know where I am. I've been this way for well longer than Trump, right? And the last time we had a get together was right after Trump got elected, and I basically told them, like, look, y'all got what you deserved here.
Mhm.
You got the response action from us that we've been building for 30 years, and then you're now bitching about it, and
Mhm.
you're in my home bitching about it. And I'm sorry, but it's now time for you to eat a little humble pie and get the fuck over yourself and
Yeah.
move on. And that was
Yeah.
the last time I spoke to a lot of these people. And I'm like, and that, I don't think that's even a controversial statement. You should be
Mhm.
able to say these things between friends, where it's that kind of thing. You should be able to hold your friends' feet to the fire.
Yeah.
And when they're going off into lunatic land, they did it to me, and I sat there and went, "Yeah, you may be right about that. I think
Yeah.
you're going to be wrong in the long run." But it's clearly a lack of. There's a certain level of lack of character. Ultimately, that look, conflict doesn't create character; it reveals it. Is the
Mhm.
first rule of screenwriting. Is it's an old an old amateur screenwriter. I keep that in my head all the time. And, we're in a crisis period, and you're going to find out the true character of a lot of people when we reach that moment where their whole worldview is an existential crisis.
Speaking of
And
screenwriting, I have an idea for a movie. I've had it in the back of my head for a long, long, long time. And when I first conjured this idea up, it was a movie that could be made. Now it no longer is, but the working title for me was Fried Chicken Parmesan. And it was playing on stereotypes, obviously, of Italians. We're all in the mafia, of course,
right,
right? No one has a legitimate job. You're all criminals. I should say we are all criminals. And my idea was that there was a dirty bomb that was going off in the States somewhere. Government knew about it, but it was being done by, let's say, a Saudi prince, right? So they didn't want to create an international incident because obviously we have one of the most discombobulated allyships with the Saudis of any nation on the planet. So
right.
they didn't want to get this prince in trouble. So the US government, CIA, went to the mafia and said, we need you to find this guy and do something about this bomb. And the mafia said, we don't even have the streets like that anymore. We need to go to the African American street gangs and team up with them in order to get this actually done. And again, fried chicken parmesan, the stereotypes abound. And I thought, the end would, of course, be that the Italian sister of the son of the Don ends up marrying the second in charge of the street gang. And at
Mhm.
the end, they're all dancing and kind of making wisecracks about each other's races. I thought it would be hysterical,
Yeah.
just
Oh, it's a black
absolutely
comedy.
hysterical,
Absolutely.
because it would literally be stereotyped. It'd be like Blazing Saddles for a new era.
Right.
And
Which
I
is a
actually
movie
had a
we
guy
can't make.
writing it for me when I lived in Los Angeles. I hired a screenwriter.
All right.
And then I hated Los Angeles, so I left. Never went anywhere. But if anyone takes that idea, just put me on. I don't care. You don't have to just put my name in the credits. I think it's fantastic.
I always wanted to be the guy to crack the code of how to do Philip K. Dick's Ubik as a film, which has been tried about 17 different ways, and I have extensive notes on how to do Ubik as a film. And anybody in Hollywood wants to call me about it, you go right ahead, because I
Yeah,
can tell you exactly how to do that movie, and no one wants to do it. Chris Nolan tried with Inception, and he failed, and as far as I'm concerned,
yeah,
failed
that is a
miserably. But
terrible
that's a
movie.
what's that?
That's a terrible movie.
It really is,
It's
and
difficult to follow.
it's one of the few Chris Nolan movies I actually don't like.
Yeah.
Um, And for that reason, because I just feel like it's a first draft of an idea that didn't really have enough weight behind it. And it was funny, this morning I was at Amazon and I reminded myself that I really wanted to get a copy of Tenet, which is a movie that the more I watch it, the more I like it. And then go scrolling through to go buy a copy of that on 4K. I saw the 8-movie Chris Nolan collection, and I'm like, I don't have. I like all these movies except for Inception. And I'm like, yeah, that's not a value anymore. And I already have the Dark Knight trilogy on Blu-ray. What do I need to upgrade it to 4K for? I'm not going to watch it that many times in the rest of my life. So I just wanted to spending $20 and getting Tenet as opposed to $100, and but it was just funny. I just literally had this go through my head this morning. So
it's funny, man. I was a comic book kid, and I was Marvel and Batman. That was my whole thing. All things Marvel, and then also Batman.
Right.
And the original, say, 6 or 7 Marvel movies, just so much fun.
Yeah, they were.
Not movies, though. Dark Knight movies. Those were actual movies. Those are
the movies and difference between movies and film, or movies are
film.
what Scorsese would say, movies and cinema. Right. And they were movies. Those early Marvel movies. John Favreau's Iron Man is a great movie.
Fun. They were just fun. Like watching. And I get Robert Downey Jr. a lot. There's a lot of guys I get.
Right.
So like people come up to me, anyone ever tell you? I was at a wedding once, and the drunk bride comes over and is like, I can't believe Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man's at my wedding. I'm like, it's very nice to meet you. I'm like, I don't know, what the hell is she talking about, right? I get some flattering ones and some unflattering ones. I get Robert Downey Jr. I get Nicolas Cage. I get who's the guy in Billions?
In what?
He's in Billions. I can never remember his name because I'm blocking out that people sometimes say I look like him.
No, I've never watched.
He was also in Sideways. Did you ever see Sideways?
Yeah, you're not talking Paul Giamatti.
Yeah, I get him.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you get Paul Giamatti. That's interesting.
I get Paul Giamatti, and then I get that one blues guy who also I can't remember.
His name. In my mind, he'll never be anything more than Pig Vomit from the Howard Stern movie. Every time we see him, oh look, it's Pig Vomit.
It's Pig Vomit. It's spectacular.
So I mean, man's won Oscars since then and everything else. And to me, he's still just Pig Vomit. Like you never get over your first impression of an actor, right? So it's just funny, but yeah. I don't get that at all. What I get is, he's kind of good, but he's a little Jewy.
He was perfect in Sideways.
He was
in Sideways. He was perfectly Jewy. Like it fit him perfect. Who's the other guy? Dave Matthews. That's the other guy I get a lot.
Huh. Interesting.
I get Dave Matthews a lot. Yeah. I actually have a funny picture I'll show you offline of me kissing a goddaughter at a baptism. And Dave Matthews leaning over his guitar, and the way these two pictures look, it's like it's the same person. It's ridiculous. Wow. Yeah. But
all right. So now that we've done that, where do you want to riff to now?
I want to actually ask your opinion on something, if I could, because I have a sort of undeveloped opinion on it. Somebody asked me the other day what I think of the abortion issue, and we actually talked about it for the first time on our podcast with Mike Ferris. He was our guest. And I never am public about this. And so I'm more comfortable doing it with you than anybody. I don't like it personally, right? However, there are women in my life that I care tremendously about that I cannot tell them they committed murder. I just can't do it.
Right.
So where does somebody like me end up falling in that? I don't know how to sort of, because you can't really make abortion what I believe it is without telling hundreds of thousands of actually very good people that they murdered their child.
Yeah. No, I
have a really hard time with this.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat you are. And I'll be honest with you, what I say over and over and over again is like my issue. I have my opinion on abortion. I just don't think it should be in any way, manner, shape, or form part of the state. Should not be involved in it. You express your belief system with respect to it, in that if you believe that abortion is murder, or however you want to term it, and I don't disagree with you on this, it is up to you then to figure out how you personally can try to mitigate those murders being committed. And that means if that means helping to foster the woman through the process in order to not, to not give up the child that way, and give it up to adoption or whatever you have to do. We have to foster the sense of community to get back to making it comfortable for the woman to make the decision not to murder her child. And after that, it becomes a matter of, well, it's a personal thing at that point between you. It's between you and the relationship you have with the other person. And, you have to ultimately decide where you fall on this. I've had the same thing. I've been in the same position, and I'm not going to cut somebody off because of that.
Yeah. It's interesting.
And it was a weird thing. We had a weird little moment where my daughter, for example, just fooling around with her boyfriend a little bit, but she missed her period. Now, she missed her period because she was under stress because her aunt just died, and there was all these other things, and she didn't understand, right? And then she came to us and she was worried, and she was worried about our reaction in case she was. And we were like, well, honey, no matter what happens here, we're gonna love you and adore you, and we're not gonna do anything to ostracize you. And if you decide but at the same time, we'll support you to, if you, God, she wasn't in any way, manner, shape, or form. Like, we'll get you a pregnancy test so you can get rid of your anxiety over this, but we can move forward. And she was more worried that I was going to be adamant that she would have the child and that her quote unquote life would be ruined. And she was more worried about that. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's an issue, but it's not like you wouldn't have an immense amount of support to go through that.
Right.
And then your life would take a turn and you would own the responsibility of the actions you took. And, but you would still have the support and the love of your family to, get you through this. Like, and we'll work it out. Like, under no circum, but the idea of taking the easy way out, they didn't raise you for that. And that's that. And, thankfully she turned out to not be pregnant, and, any blah, blah, blah. And she also then realized at that point that, yeah, maybe she shouldn't be fooling around the way she is. And she put the kibosh on all the rest of it. And, we even brought up the idea of birth control with her the other day. And she said, no, I don't want it because I'm not going to need it. I'm like, all right.
Fair enough.
Scare, the scare, and it was enough, and that's it. So now she's going to she'll move forward with her life, fully aware of the potential consequences, having, scared herself into it. And,
yeah, for me, the fact of the matter is, I'm not actually, murder is not my word. I'm kind of like, marinating on the idea of what it actually is to me. And, for a long, long time, I just said, like, I'm a guy, don't care, not my issue. Right. And then I got kind of convinced by a lot of speakers on this that, like, just because it doesn't directly affect you doesn't mean you can't have an opinion on it. So I started to kind of explore my opinion on it. And again, I'm not using the word murder as if that's what I'm calling it. I'm trying to understand where and when that word becomes appropriate in different contexts. So, for example, you and I are both Second Amendment guys, right? And yes, I'm changing the subject, but we're both Second Amendment guys. And my wife has asked me before, she's like, do you think you could shoot somebody that walks in my house? I'm like, without hesitation. I know that I could, and it's another thing, I get into a fight with that same sort of left-leaning friend group of mine, where they say to me, why do you need a high round magazine, high number of bullets? Why do you need 25 bullets? So, well, have you ever shot? Like, I'm not a great shot in the calmest environment in the world.
Right.
Terrible. You ever, like, get on a golf course and somebody that matters to you is watching, and you watch the ball spray in the wrong direction because you're under stress? Imagine a bullet. Now, he said, well, how many bullets do you actually need to stop a home invader? The minute you start shooting, they're going to run. So here's my number. The number of bullets that I need to stop a home invader is 1 million. Okay, now talk me off the ledge. Okay, if someone's coming in to touch my wife, I get 10 million bullets.
I get as many as I need.
I get as many as I want, and as many as I need to stop them, because you're coming in my house. Yeah. And this goes, in a weird way, goes to the economic freedoms that they're trying to take away from us, and the property rights that fall within that. Because, like, what do you mean if they come into your house? The government owns your house. They can come in if they want. which is what this whole squatter thing seems to be. But no, I get a
Try that in
million.
Florida.
Yeah, well, I
Well,
know.
we have castle doctrines. A part of there are reasons why I live where I live in Florida.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
have castle doctrine. We have homestead exemption. We have the some of the most liberal homeschooling regulations in the country. Like there are fundamental reasons why I'm here in Florida.
we have stand your
We don't
ground.
just not have a duty to retreat in our home. Or,
Yeah,
you don't have, we don't just not have a quote duty to retreat. We have a duty to defend our home if we so
yeah,
choose.
yeah,
And that is one of the things that, I love the idea of them trying to meme into existence that, Florida man is somehow, this uncultured boob. I'm like, Florida man's awesome. I
yeah.
live with Florida man, and Florida man's amazing.
The
Like,
amount of people I've showed Florida man to with pride on my face
yeah,
is I love it.
yeah,
I'll
yeah,
tell you a quick story, and we can talk about anything else after this. But when I moved, so I grew up in the city, right, west side of Chicago, and neighborhood called Cicero, and then a neighborhood called Galewood after that. And a lot of people will know those as sort of reasonable cities to live in at the time. Okay, reasonable neighborhoods, I should say. And they, of course, broke bad. They all do in big Democrat-run cities. But when I turned 19, my parents moved to the suburbs. I have a sister who's 7 years younger than me, and they did not want her growing up where we lived. So they moved to the burbs, right? When I was 23, I moved back into the city. And my father, for the life of me, for the life of him, I should say, could not understand why I moved back. He's like, both my parents were immigrants, right? I spoke Italian before I spoke English. My father's like, I worked 7 days a week to get you out of the city and you move right back in,
right.
right? So now my father, because of this, he temporarily disowned me, the whole dramatic Italian thing. It's fine. We got over it. But my mother's like, I'm going to come down and cook for you. Great. She drives down. Father wouldn't come. We go to a grocery store in the neighborhood to buy some stuff. And my mother's like, I just don't understand. I cook for you at home. I do your laundry. I do this. I go, Ma, I don't want to go from listening to you guys to listening to my wife. I don't even know how to pay a bill right now. I
Mm-hmm.
want to know how to pay a bill, right?
Right.
I want to know how to do my own laundry. So we're in line to buy stuff, and she's kind of down. My mom was a big Elvis fan, and there was a tabloid on the rack near the checkout that said Elvis spotted in Oklahoma or whatever. And to just try and lighten the mood, I go, look, Mom, Elvis is alive. You don't have to be depressed about him anymore, right? And she looks at it, and this guy in front of us turns and goes to me, wide-eyed, Tommy. He's like, you think that's not true? I killed women and children in Laos, but we were never there. And I said, that's why I live here, Ma. This guy's great.
Right.
Like he says, he's nuts and he's hysterical, and I love it. Now,
Right.
unfortunately, he's probably a veteran who was suffering,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a way of me understanding that my life is good, is seeing
Right.
all these things, right? Florida man, to me, I went to the Naples swamp boat races last weekend.
Oh, wow.
What a hoot. I
Yeah.
mean, what an absolute joy. And as we walk in, I'm walking in with somebody who could buy and sell me. And he goes, this is Americana. I go, you're right, it is.
Yeah.
They did the national anthem. Everybody stood. They took their ripped baseball caps off and they put them on their heart.
Right.
They just, it was beautiful. It
Right.
was a beautiful day. I love Florida, man.
Yeah, no, it's fun. It's funny if you really want to get a sense of Florida man. There's all the early Carl Hiaasen books, right, which are all set in
Mhm.
Florida. All those murder mysteries. There's this one great moment in the second one where he goes to a bass boat race, and they all like take off. They go out fishing and they take off, and they've got these. He lovingly describes the massive engines on the back of these boats and this and all this stuff, and they take off at a shot. And how what happens if they crash? How badly they get hurt? And the woman just turns to him and goes, "No, honey, at that speed, they just flat out die." And it's like it's this wonderful moment, like it's stuck with me for freaking years. And my wife and I would just look at each other every once in a while when somebody's doing something something reckless, and it's just part of the lexicon. It's, no, honey, at that speed, they just flat out die.
They just
and,
flat out die. These swamp
and
boat races, they literally have like they flood a track, right? And they have two or three different types of vehicles. And the Jeeps, the way they're modified is hysterical. I'm going to pull one up so that you can see it as I'm telling the story, if I can get it to show up on the screen. But the way they modify the vehicles is hysterical. So because again, this guy is actually I'm going to loosely use a term. He's an investor in one of these vehicles, right? He's never going to make a cent on it, but he's an investor. Here's what the Jeeps look like, if you can see this.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean,
Since this is an audio podcast, I'm getting the treat and you guys aren't. But yeah,
yeah, this
yeah,
is
this
spectacular.
thing is beyond insane. And
So
it's the
these
coolest thing.
guys, like, they go in this, and it's like 3 feet in one area. It goes down to like 6, 7 feet of depth. And these guys go in there. So we're getting this VIP tour and we're talking to the guy who inspects the vehicles. And he goes, once they pass inspection, the next thing we do is we have them close their eyes, start their engine, and hit their seatbelt release and their engine kill switch. Because oftentimes when the car goes wrong, it goes upside down. And if they don't know how to release themselves, basically the seatbelt is fighting against guys trying to save their lives and getting them out of there. People
Right.
drown in these races.
Yes.
They flip the trucks and they just drown. So how would you say it? They just straight up die.
They just flat out die.
Flat out die. That's what it is. Oh, it was spectacular.
Yeah, no,
I'm telling you, the
it, it,
nation state of Florida is a wonderful place.
it really is. It's got everything. And there's great maps of Florida, that of the various parts of Florida, and what's trying to kill you and what's not, and all
Yeah.
this stuff. And there's just it's just become this thing. But the our cultural overlords, for lack of a better
Yeah.
term, really think that they can meme into existence something about Florida that isn't true. And it just kind of reinforces those old stereotypes about the South, or mouth breathing rednecks who can't do anything. And this comes from Hollywood, and it's to help reinforce this frankly Yankee sense of superiority that has almost zero application in the real world. Because when these people come down here, and I'm one of them, I remember when I came down here, I was 18 years old, and in many ways also wanted to do the same thing. I left New York to go and live on my own. Yeah, sure, I was at college and I was still being supported by my parents in a lot of ways, but I had to go out and I had to learn how to pay bills and do my laundry and live like a human being. And I thought I was going to come down to Florida and I was going to kill it because these people are all backwards and slow. And boy, did I get a quick education in that. And slowly over time, I had to shed my Yankeedom, or go the fuck home. And today, I go out of my way to remind people. I'm like, nah, man, like, I get it. Lincoln was a friggin' tyrant, and y'all are you know y'all are awesome, and I don't want to ever. And now I literally will boycott the state of New York. I won't go there. I mean, I have a hard. If somebody professionally wanted me to come to New York, either to speak or whatever, I would have to give it serious consideration. I've been there once in the last 30 years on purpose. I missed family member. I missed christenings and stuff because I wouldn't give the state of New York the fucking sales tax. That's how strongly I feel about it.
Yeah.
And that's how much of a Floridian I am. And now, my family they all left New York and they all, live in the Carolinas now.
Oh, that's great. I'm not at that stage with my family. Like, I go back and see them in Chicago, but I don't go into the city except for work.
Mm-hmm.
I do have some work I still need to do in the city about once a month. And I don't intend to wind that down because it's a nice, easy chunk of change that I get to do for it.
Sure.
But I am in and out. Like, we have a friend owns a restaurant in the city of Chicago. It's actually where I met my wife. My current wife was this restaurant. And he owns it and he lives across the street from it. And we called him up. We said, hey, you want to get lunch? And he's like, yeah, I'll come to you. I'm like, he goes, no, I don't want to have lunch down here. He goes, I don't want to do anything down here except work and lock myself in my apartment. He lives across the street from the restaurant.
Wow.
That restaurant used to serve dinner till 10:30 on a Friday night. 9 o'clock. You could walk in at 9:05 now. And they're like, can I just get a quick something? They're like, nope, kitchen's closed. He goes, we do not want to be around the city of Chicago past 10:30.
Jesus.
It's just, and I'm telling you, man, my friends that are stuck there, they won't even admit they're stuck there. They say they choose to do it. I'm like, you don't choose it. You don't. Because you could go somewhere where there's no state sales tax. And if you could have the same life and not have to shovel snow, no way you're telling me you choose it, especially since you can fly there pretty cheaply.
Right.
If you ever wanted to do something in Chicago, you could.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell these guys all the time, moving back home is the easiest thing in the world. You know the streets, you know the neighborhoods, you know where the trains run, you know how to do it. Moving away is difficult. And I wish people would just admit, I'd like to do it, but I'm scared or I can't. because that's all that makes sense to me.
Yeah. No, it's true. And it's funny. We're watching people move into this area. And
Mhm.
for a long time, I live north of Gainesville. If you know
Okay,
where Gainesville,
I
Gainesville
do.
is like just south of the armpit of Florida, or just
Yeah.
southwest of the armpit of Florida. So everything north of Gainesville is what one of my patrons says, dude, you don't live in North Florida, you live in South Georgia. But that's a different culture. That's more him, being from Alabama than anything else. And I like, and I can say for years I've been, the entire time I've been doing Gold Goats and Guns, I said, one of the things that people have to realize is that everything south of, say, Ocala, or Orlando, is built up and is expensive. It
Yeah.
as Trump, as the Trump tax cuts take effect, and as the country degrades culturally, you're going to see people moving to Florida for the advantages of living in Florida, but they're going to have to come farther and farther north, and they're going to push into all these hard rural areas like where I am, and eventually, we're sitting on gold mines of real estate, where you could, I remember when I bought my property back in 2003, or actually it was December 16th, 2002 is when I closed on the property. um I I was kicking myself for spending $3,150 an acre for a 19-acre parcel of land. This was $750 of an acre land not 5 years previously.
Mhm.
And today, this land goes for anywhere from $12,000 to $15,000 an acre. And it's probably going to double again, because
Yeah.
we haven't even begun to see the move into this area. My dog agrees with me. So
Dog says don't sell.
she's kind of crazy. So
Mhm.
the situation is, where we are in this area of the state is, it's a massive thing. And
Mhm.
what's happening, and these people are having to move in and deal with the culture shock, but at the same time, they deal with the culture shock, but then they kind of find out, like, wow, it's not really as bad as we thought it was. These people are good, decent people. They just, talk a little funny, and you
Yeah.
know that's all the rest of it. But they all raise cows. They all know where the local hay guy is, and everybody knows somebody, and everybody's got a
I know.
friend. I know a guy. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it.
Yeah.
It's the best. Those are the best four words in the English language. I know a guy, right?
That's fantastic. I love those kind of people. I mean, honestly, it's just a different. I know my neighbors. I haven't known my neighbors in years, you know, other than the people immediately connected to me. I haven't known them. They do drinks in the driveway here, like once a month or so. Everybody gets together in somebody's driveway and just has drinks for 3 hours and talks. You just don't get that. You go to Chicago, you got to go to a bar or a restaurant. You know, here it's like just bring your own drinks, bring your own chair. It's
Yeah,
infinitely a better life, and I'm infinitely happier down here. And I told my wife we should have done this 10 years ago, except we would have only been dating,
yeah,
and you probably would have left me for some buff rodeo guy or something. But
yeah.
I didn't need that in my life.
Mm,
But yeah, it's tremendous. And the governor we have here, it's part of the reason I didn't want him to run for president. I'm
oh,
glad the way it worked out
yeah.
because I just wanted him here.
Yeah.
I didn't want him to
We
leave.
felt the exact same way. We're like, yeah, Ron, I don't know what you're doing running for president,
Yeah,
because you have unfinished business here.
exactly. Stay here and sort of handpick your successor is what I'm looking for out of him.
Mhm.
I want him to kind of be like a Putin,
Right.
or he
I
just kind
like,
of,
well, yeah. Well, I mean, he may get his wish if they steal the 2024 election in November, and like we have
yeah,
to friggin' but they're memeing that and the whole Civil War thing into existence too. This is just old. This is all just old British divide and rule shit that's been going on since the day after Cornwallis surrendered at Yorktown, as you and I've talked about before. It's like, and I've said this a
mhm,
thousand times, and it's like every day it's another thing. There was another article this morning in another British rag saying, "Oh, the U.S. is headed for a civil war." Like,
please.
again, no, we're gonna tell everybody, no, it's time to get y'all shit together.
Mhm,
We're in charge now, and
yeah,
that's the way it's going to be, because America is a great thing in conception. America is a very important thing. I don't know if we touched on this when I was on your show.
I don't think so, but I'd like to.
It's this is one of the problems that we have to remind ourselves. The rest of the world didn't have rights.
Mhm,
Government, by legal compact, that we have, and we have a constitution which says that we the people are superior to this government. We
right.
enshrine this Constitution. They need to destroy that. The Europeans, the British, whatever, pick one. I don't care. Even the Chinese, like they all have to destroy that because their whole system is predicated on the idea that you don't have any rights, that the government is superior to you, that the king is your sovereign, and or whatever. And this experiment has to be destroyed ideologically. Okay. And that's why they're attacking us the way they are. That's why they're turning Chicago into a place where no one wants to be in the city after 10:30 and the crazies come out. It's like what you're describing to me when you were talking about the restaurant. It was like all I had flashing through my head was you never, escaped New York. Everybody knows you don't go above 59th Street, after dark, Snake. Like, I'm getting Ernest Borgnine vibes over here. Like,
Yeah.
and this is the thing that we have to remind ourselves we're being gaslit into this. We don't have to accept this at all. But if we do, then the outcomes are already preordained. But if we don't accept them and we just say no a lot and, learn how to say y'all and fuck you, then like, it's not hard. Like it's not difficult.
Okay. So let me ask you something else then. And I talked about this with, Michael and Jimmy yesterday, Michael Ferris and Jim. They were both saying that, they're done with PC and they're done with kindness and they're done trying to convince people this and that. And that's another thing I struggle with because I'm by nature a confrontational person, right? It's just, I get angry. I have a bad temper. But when it comes to politics, and I do want to touch on the election, but when it comes to politics, I still try to get people to see something. So going back to that same liberal group, a friend of mine told me that he's like, well, my wife's going to be pretty upset, but I'm going to tell him if DeSantis is the nominee, I got to vote for him, right? She's going to be a little upset with me. And I'm like, what would she be upset about? And he goes, well, I don't think you should have picked the fight with Disney. I'm like, I could actually see where you're coming from on that. I don't consider him to have picked a fight with Disney, but Disney had privileges that they shouldn't have had other corporations, and he rectified it. Maybe the timing was bad, whatever. I'll leave that one alone. I don't care about that one, to be honest. He said, well, the banning books. And the top of my head exploded. I'm like, so what books are banned? He's banning all those books. I said, let me ask you, if you can find me one book I can't buy in Florida, just one, I'll give you $10,000 in a bag that you don't have to report to the government. Find me one book that I can't go to Amazon and have shipped here, or go to a Barnes and Noble, which we still have here, by the way. Go to a Barnes and Noble and not tell them I want this on the shelf because I'd like to buy it, and have them tell me, oh, we can't, it's banned in Florida. Not one.
It's not banned in Florida. It's banned in Florida schools.
Right.
They're not going to teach
not even banned at all
grooming behavior in Florida schools. That's what this is about.
That's not book banning. And I have a friend, James Fishback, who worked with Vivek Ramaswamy, and he did an article recently for the Free Press where he actually did the research himself, and he found that if you want to call books being taken out of schools conservative, you want to call that banning, conservative books have been banned for years.
Absolutely.
4 years.
Absolutely.
Like he made comparisons between books by who's that guy that wrote I can't even remember his name right now. I read the damn book and I can't remember his name. Books by Wajid Ali are in the school libraries, whereas books by Thomas Sowell are not.
Right.
That's not who I was trying to think of. Anyway, his name will come to me when we're not talking about this. So, but Jimmy and Mike were both of the opinion, like, no, I'm done. We can't be kind anymore. We can't try and convince anybody anymore. We just have to fight. And that's where I brought up this thing about economic freedom to them, because some people won't fight. They just won't. They're too scared of losing their ability to go buy, their tofu or whatever it is. So where do you fall in sort of convincing people versus just saying, no, I'm not being kind anymore?
Well, it depends on who they are and depends on where they are in the process. For me,
Ibram X. Kendi. That's who it was. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, my point is the way I see this is that, look, there are certain people and certain things and certain ideas you just have to say no to. Like, that's it. I'm done. I'm not going to let you sit here and try and argue terms and dust and definitions in order to justify, diddling kids. Like, no, I'm not doing it. Like,
Yeah.
no, diddling kids is wrong, and you're sick. Fuck you.
Mhm.
If it's not diddling kids, we can have a conversation. But
Yeah.
if you want to like diddle kids, you want to argue, do you want to argue Keynesian, stimulus? Fine. You want to argue
Fine.
like whether or not it's right or proper for people to have gas stoves? Fine. I'll argue it with you. You're going to lose, but I'll argue it with you just to have a day in the sun. Like, fine. But it all depends. It depends on the person. It depends on how they structure their argument.
Mhm.
And if somebody just looks at it, just like parrots a talking point that they heard from John Stewart, who got it off of Emily's list, like, no, I'm just gonna like look at them and go, dude, I want to have a conversation with a real person, not with somebody who got their talking point from Nancy Pelosi. Fuck
Yeah.
you. Let's have a real conversation. Prove to me that you're a real person, and I will treat you like one. And if I approach the conversation with a degree of empathy about their anxieties, I generally get farther with them.
Mhm.
And so you spend some time being a little humble or a little defensive or whatever it is. And then you work with them to find out what it is that they're really worried about. And then you share that anxiety and you say, look, we have a different perspective on that same anxiety, but it's the anxiety that we're both feeling, that we're both expressing. So now let's work through why we feel the anxiety that we do or whatever. And this is, the way this is the way you get through on an individual basis with people.
Yeah.
I have friends today in my local board gaming group that are not down with the Tom. Like they don't buy any. They're on a completely different level of political action and political framework, but at the same time, they've also recognized I bring value to the table as a human being, and I show them respect at the same level. So we don't, do we have deep philosophical conversations about politics? No, generally that's our safe space where we all just hang out and, get away from politics for the day and get away from and all of that stuff and just treat each other like human beings and, you know, try to beat the snot out of each other at the gaming table. And
I
that's
wish people
okay.
would do more of that. I wish people would agree that, like, look, let's just not talk about this unless you actually want to know my opinion on something,
Right.
which, that to me is like the biggest part of it. I mean, somebody said to me recently, is like, you talk about the Constitution, because to me, back to the abortion thing, I think it's constitutionally correct that Roe v. Wade is gone. I'm not sure that I'm a fan that that women saw this as taking away their reproductive rights, which of course your right to reproduce is the right to have an abortion. That's weird. That's a weird name. That name doesn't even sort of fit. But reproductive rights, you want the right to not reproduce. That's weird to me. But anyway, the Constitution being 237 years old at this point. Guy said to me, that's like a 200-year-old document. It doesn't really apply now. I'm like, what about beyond good and evil? That was like in the 1840s. Does that still apply? What about Socrates? Does that still apply? Like, some of these things are actually valid for centuries because they're that well done. And I truly believe the Constitution is one of those documents.
I absolutely, without a shred of hesitation. It is
Mhm.
the kind of thing that it's like the Magna Carta. It's like, the Codes of Hammurabi. It's like these are foundational documents to move us away from autarky,
Mhm.
and move us out of systems and ideas that are, that are that 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 move us towards consciousness and away from a lack of it, for
Mhm.
lack of a better, for I think that's the best way to put it. Because you can make some arguments about whether or not consciousness is a particularly old idea thing, even within humans, and that's possibly even a very new thing. That I can't remember the guy's name who makes that argument about the um oh God, I'm now blanking on the name of the book and the author. That my wife, if she was standing here, she'd be like yelling at me about it. And but you know, these are documents that have moved human thought forward and into action that is tangible and abiding and important.
Mhm.
And for them to piss on it the way they have reveals who they are as people. And we have to remind ourselves of that and at every level. And so, yes, we should fight for those ideas. We should fight for the ideals of what America stood for against, the British crown and the old colonial powers of Europe. And at the same time, also be the harshest critics of what the United States has become.
Thank you.
Right. This is important as well. The highest form of patriotism is being able to criticize what we've become and want to fix it. And if we're not willing to engage, that conversation honestly and with all people's, perspectives, taken into some form of consideration, well, then, yeah, you can go your separate way and we'll go ours, but we're going to do so on our time, not on somebody else's timetable when it benefits them. And this gets back to why I'm so adamant that Europe has to fall first, why the Brits have to be, finally fucking destroyed as a global shadow power. Like, this stuff has to end in order for us to decide, okay, how much of the American experiment are we going to retain on our terms and for whom? And then we'll let the chips fall where they may later on. But these people are clearly putting their thumb on the scale. They're clearly trying to destroy what's left of human dignity. Orwell's, image of a boot stamping on the face of humanity in perpetuity is what they believe in. And I'm sorry, but I stand here and say, no. And I don't have to even rise to their bait. The biggest thing to do at this point is to not rise to their bait. Don't let them trigger you over the latest silly distraction that they've thrown in front of you that, the Republican operatives on Twitter are going to amplify for their own fucking purposes on a daily basis. Just look at it and go, that's just dumb. Or better, Mad Max Fury Road. That's bait, that is. And I'm going to ignore that and I'm going to move on. And I'm going to continue living my life the best way I can.
I think that's one of the hardest problems that Republicans have with me when they say, why do you identify as a Democrat? I'm sorry, as an independent. God, I actually said that. Wow. They said, why are you registered as an independent? Why do you identify as an independent? Because I reserve the right to call you guys idiots as well. Like, it has nothing to do with what party you decide, what party cult you decide to be a member of.
Right.
Which in a weird way, Tommy, is I've got a weird little leaning toward RFK. I hate so many of his policies, but I also know that the president can be so ineffectual. But I'm just so desperate for a third party.
Yeah.
Or how about no party? You know how RFK.
No one for president.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, there's
RFK.
RFK is an interesting. I get why you're thinking about RFK.
I mean, I'm probably not going to do it at the end of the day.
I find him too goofy
especially economically. But go ahead.
Well, I was going to say there's an old you're a comic book guy, so I don't know if you read Marvel and DC and only Batman. I was a DC only guy that every once in a while would dabble and read a Marvel comic here or there because I was reading comics in the 90s when DC was ascendant. And the best work was being done there. And there's a storyline in Grant Morrison's run on Doom Patrol where Mr. Nobody runs for president. And it's literally nobody for president. And it's hilarious. And it's funny as god awful. It is just truly and in the anarchic spirit of all Grant Morrison's work. It was like the high point from a political perspective. It was great stuff. And I quote it every once in a while, and I'll find panels from that and just like, oh, look, like nobody for president. And it's that old Libertarian Party adage that none of the above should always be on the ballot along with all the other candidates. But that we have a situation where like Nikki Haley loses to Noda at the Nevada primary this year, right?
He lost me with his vice presidential pick, but
agreed.
Then it's like, okay, there's the far left coming out. No problem. We get who you are. But there's a weird part. Like, I like that Trump might actually be, it's funny. The thing that bothers me about Trump, he's still pushing the vaccine as a good thing. And that drives me insane.
It is a very bad thing.
Yeah, it's a very bad thing. And he's still saying, no, no, the vaccine was fine. I developed it. It was my victory, blah, blah, blah.
He's a
It's like,
narcissist. He can't help it.
yeah,
He can never
he can
admit
never be
mistakes.
wrong.
No.
And, we'll see with his vice presidential choice, but I just have a hard time with that. I'd like to see some of these COVID people, unlike what happened during the financial crisis, where nobody was held to account.
Right.
None of the big bankers, none of the big COVID people are going to be held to account if Trump gets elected, in my opinion. He's going to go after the people that were impeaching him and putting him on trial. And it's like, okay, I get why. I'm Italian. I don't forget stuff either. But like, that's not why you're being elected, in my opinion. And I think he has a high probability of being elected. But did you see
if there's an election?
If there's an election, thank you. Did you see this Huntington Beach voter ID thing?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so Huntington Beach passed voter ID and limited mail-in ballots, and they're going to be policing all drop boxes. They're going to actually put, I think it was sheriff's deputies. They're limiting the number of drop boxes. They're going to put sheriff's deputies 24 hours at the drop boxes, or lock them when there's nobody there, right? California's attorney general is suing them.
Of course.
Yeah, suing them, saying that that's going to restrict voting. I know a lot of people of color, for lack of a more acceptable way of calling them.
Mm-hmm.
All of them have IDs, man. All of them think this is ridiculous. That gaslighting thing that you said is the most real and accurate description of what's going on. When you see these people on the street walking up to black people and saying, do you have an ID? Yeah, I do. Do you know where to get it? Of course I do. But then they ask white liberals at Stanford or some of the universities, well, a lot of black people they don't know any black people. They've never been around any black people.
It's like, no, I know. Bobby, it is the worst kind of racism.
It really is.
It's the worst kind of racism. It's the
That's
one that says,
the comment
"Oh,
of
you're a
this conversation.
child, and we can't, and you need to be protected by us." Where you're a burden. You're the white man's burden. It's like literally the white man's burden argument, like taken to its ludicrous extreme. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? And I used to argue this with my white liberal friends here in Gainesville. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, you're just insane. It's just dumb. You can't do anything in America without a state issued ID beyond the age of 16. You just can't. It's just dumb. And like, okay, they don't have them. Fine. I am willing to pay the $5 it takes to get these people. Was it going to cost me $5,000? Fine. I will sponsor 1,000 people to spend the $5 to get a state ID. There you go. Here's my money. There's the solution to your problem. No, then clearly that this is not a problem. This is something you're trying to exploit. Period.
It's ridiculous. And the idea that some people actually buy that as valid educational information that you can bank decisions on.
It's and you and I are in capital markets.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's kind of bring this home because we got about 5 minutes left before you and I both have to bolt.
Yeah.
So now imagine those same people. Well, they're the ones with the investment capital, and they're making decisions with, collectively hundreds of billions of dollars of investment capital, and they're swayed by what we see in the financial community, the financial press, right? They watch CNBC or they watch whatever they watch, and they get their, and you're like, really? You take investment advice from Aaron Burnett? Like, are you kidding? Like, she's not even hot anymore. Like, dude, seriously.
Yeah, we recently had a conversation with somebody that runs a startup studio, right? And they bring ideas in and they ramp them up. And I told them I had an idea for investors, for individual investors, and all this idea was some sort of a structure where you input the data that this particular person trying to sell you something gives you. And this is risky, these fees are too high, or this person is outright robbing you. I said, if we could develop something like that, there'd never be a Bernie Madoff again. The interesting thing about Bernie Madoff to me was exactly human nature, right? He claimed to make 1% a month forever and never lose money in options that the volume wasn't there. to prove it out, but whatever. These people, because he was so consistently making money, which we all know is not possible, gave him more money.
Mhm.
And as opposed to something I try to tell people all the time in investing is like, when you have something that is ramping up. I bought gold in November 2022 as a trade. Okay. I scaled out of it about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And
Sure.
there's by the way, physical, I bought and held. But as a trade, I started
Of course.
scaling out of it because it went parabolic. And
Right.
having been doing this 30 years, I go, okay, that may last a little bit longer, but it isn't going to last forever. So I'm going to scale out of it, take that money out, and reduce my risk. Some people call that rebalancing their portfolio. I call it, this is fucking crazy. It's not going to keep going like this.
It's like Jim Sinclair, the God's rest his soul, his soul, always said, "Look, you want basic trading advice. Sell a rhino horn, buy a fish hook. It's not tough. When the thing goes parabolic in one direction, do the opposite thing and then do the other thing in the bottom, and
the
and
fish
then
hook
leave
thing is
20% on the top and bottom for the God agreed. I mean, this is the way
yeah.
Jim made billions this way.
And the fish
Trading
hook thing is really apropos because a lot of people say, like they said to me, I don't remember the stock, so I'm not going to go into it, but like, this is down a lot. It's a good company. You buying it yet? Not till it rotates back up.
Right.
So the bottom of the fish hook is critical to that particular strategy because
Right.
I tell people all the time, if you're going to get into a hot air balloon with the intention of going up and seeing all of the northern area of Florida that you live in, I want one that's going up. I don't want to jump in one that's coming down, waiting for it to slam to the ground and go
Right.
back.
Right.
Right. If I want to get on a train going north, I'm going to get on a train that's been going north. Not going to get on one that's going south and wait for it to turn around.
Right.
It's the same exact theory. So
it really is very important. And I tell people all the time, it's like, the old adage in the market is don't catch a falling knife, blah, 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 blah. What's important is when I teach people and when I teach my subscribers in terms of when we didn't get it, you and I didn't get into this when I was on your show.
Right.
But when I do technical analysis, I do a very simple trend following read of candlesticks and wait for reversal signals that I know are actionable. And then I say, well, this is your buy point. And markets have three states. They're either going up, they're going down, or they're trading sideways. It's not that tough, folks.
Yeah.
Draw a box around markets that are going sideways for any length of time, buy the breakout or the breakdown or sell the breakdown.
Yeah.
And keep it as simple as possible. I was taught by a prop trader, take all the crap off the charts, take all the lines off, take all the bullshit off. I mean, you don't even really necessarily need the prices on the right-hand side. You can just look at the candlesticks, and the candlesticks will tell you the story. And then you can do some very simple, some simple quantitative analysis about the probability of a break high or a break low. And then you know where you are. And that's how you can set your stops. And it becomes kind of almost mechanical. Right.
Yeah, I have some trend lines on my charts, but I call them trading trend lines because they actually give me a signal and a target.
Sure.
Right. The way that I draw them differently than traditional trend lines. And people give me, the trend line. So you know which way the trend is. I remember I took the trend lines off and I said, which direction is this trend? Down. That's not what you don't need a trend line to tell you that. Just look at it.
Just look at it.
Just look at it.
Yeah, I the older I get, the more I do this because I do podcasts for the private podcast every Wednesday and Sunday for the patrons, and so I've now done something close to 600 of these over the last few years, and I think back to when I did them earlier, and I think back to my analysis back then, and I think about what I'm doing now, and I'm like, every day I get better at just reading the story that the chart is telling me without trying to impute some kind of narrative or other story on top of it. And then if I get a discordant piece of information from one chart, let's look at something else that may tell us some other portion of that story, and then look at that chart. So, for example, like when I do, I look at equity markets. I don't just look at the raw price of the Dow, the DAX, the NASDAQ, whatever, and then try and figure out which one is in better position. I'm like, I look at them relative to themselves. And and for example, right now, the equity markets are all contracting a little bit. The Dow reversed without putting in a new high. Well, that kind of makes sense because it was a massive run in the Dow. The Euro Stoxx 50, on the other hand, it had a blow off top and then reversed in the same week, engulfing the previous week. That was worse. It's going to, in the short term, the Dow may look worse because on a percentage basis, but the strength of the signal that was given by traders in reality tell you that the Euro Stoxx 50 is actually in a much worse position technically. And that means that likely the downtrend that's emerging now is going to be much harder and much deeper because than the one the Dow is throwing. And that's right. and that's the kind of thing you do. And and when you see stuff like that, that's how these things, you eventually just get better at it. You know what I mean? And we're all on that continuous improvement journey to
if I could give anything as sort of my closing statements to
sure.
Your patrons and anyone else is listening, is don't try and be too smart. Like, you got to ignore the guys that say that active trading and investing is an intellectual pursuit. It's not. It's pattern recognition, and it is repetitive. We're not intellectuals because of what we do on these screens here. We're intellectuals because of the other stuff we talked about, if you could even call us that. Yeah. But the guys who go on CNBC, which I now call the TMZ of financial media, and they go on and they give these 5-minute things. I always say, when I would be on CNBC, which I told them to go fuck themselves in 2018, 2017 actually. I told them I wouldn't come on anymore. Is anyone who understands what I'm saying isn't doing what I'm saying because they have their own plan.
Right.
And anyone who doesn't understand what I'm saying doesn't understand what I'm saying.
Right.
So it's useless. It's useless. These kinds of conversations are useful.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Well, Bobby, this has been lovely, and we have to absolutely do this again.
Yeah, and, I'd love to, man.
Yeah, and we'll round up in a couple of months, and we'll shoot the shit again, and we'll see what we come up with, and we'll go from there. So, any final words you want to throw out there before we? No,
it's a joy to know you, man. That's my final words to it.
Oh, thank you. That's really lovely. And same back at you, dude. Like, we paisans need to just keep like doing the thing. Like, dead serious. Like, all my favorite people in finance right now are all Italians. Like, I wonder why that is. I don't know. So. All right.
This was great, man. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care. We'll talk soon.
See ya.
Well, that'll about wrap it up for episode 173 of the Gold, Goats, and Guns podcast. I want to thank Bobby Iaccino for coming out and shooting the crap with me for an hour or so. It was great fun, and it was not what I was expecting at all, and it's kind of a little Joe Rogan-esque in this way. We just kind of went off in various directions and did a thing, and that was cool. We'll be back soon. I will do another one of these soon. It will not be a month between podcasts again, so we'll go from there. So, as always, you can find my work over at my blog at goldgoatsandguns.com. You can find me on Twitter at TFL1728. And you can find Bobby at the Future's Edge podcast, by the way, which is very good. He and Jim do a great job, and it's great fun. And lastly, you can sign up for the Patreon over at Patreon/GoldGoatsAndGuns, where you can sign up for the monthly newsletter where we put all of this stuff together into a portfolio exercise and a portfolio model to help you make sense of this world going crazy. So there it is. You guys be well. You take care. We'll talk soon. Keep your stick on the ice.